You ever find yourself kind of thinking about, like where you're at in your career, like maybe thinking about switching things up, or like you've got this side project that could be something bigger, or maybe you're just curious about like what are the big choices everyone makes when it comes to work? Well, this deep dive is for you. We're going to really unpack some of those decisions and hopefully get you thinking in new ways.
Yeah, totally. Like today we're tackling this big question, job versus business. Which one is actually better? And right off the bat, there isn't one right answer for everyone. To help us figure this out, we've been looking at this really interesting conversation between Mike, a career coach, and Emma, a business consultant, on the India's Got podcast. They have some really insightful perspectives from their different fields.
Okay, so before we get too deep into it, let's all be on the same page here. Like, what do we even mean when we say job and business? I am explained it really well. A job is basically when you work for someone else, could be a huge company or even a small local one, and they pay you a salary or an hourly wage. Usually you've got a boss, you have set hours, and you know exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And one thing that's really interesting about that is you've got that stability, that regular income, that predictable rhythm that a lot of people rely on.
That predictability, like Emma was saying, it actually gives a lot of people peace of mind, doesn't it? Knowing that you've got that money coming in every month, it helps you budget, but it also just makes you feel more secure overall. Now, when we talk about business, Emma describes it as working for yourself. And that right there brings in the risk factor, but it also means there's no limit to how much you can earn. And Mike made a good point that it's a completely different ballgame. You're not just focusing on one thing, you're wearing all the hats. You're the marketing person, the salesperson, the finance person, the CEO, everything. It's way more than just one job.
Exactly. You're the whole band, which can be super exciting, but also a little scary, to be honest. So Mike and Emma went into a lot of detail about the good and bad sides of each path. We're going to follow their lead because it's a really clear way to understand the trade-offs. Why don't we start with what's great about having a job?
Sounds good. So the first big plus that Mike talked about is that stability we were just mentioning. That set salary every month is a really solid base for your finances. You know how much is coming in, which means it's easier to plan your budget and think long-term about your money. It's like a foundation for a lot of people.
Totally. It takes a lot of stress off knowing that money will be in your account like clockwork every month. Yeah. It gives you that peace of mind. And then another thing both Emma and Mike talked about was the benefits that often come with a job. Things like health insurance, a retirement plan, paid vacation, and sick leave, and sometimes even bonuses. Emma made a good point that when you're starting your own business, you have to go out and find all that stuff yourself and pay for it too.
And what's interesting about that, building on what Emma was saying, is that when you have a job, your employer negotiates those benefits for everyone, right? So they might get better deals or offer more coverage than you could get on your own, especially when you're just starting a business.
And beyond the money, Emma and Mike both brought up that with a job, it can be easier to have a better work-life balance. You usually have set hours, and when you're done for the day, it's easier to switch off and focus on your personal life. A lot of people really value having that separation.
Oh, that's so important to prevent burnout. When you have those set hours, it's easier to mentally and emotionally leave work behind, right? It gives you that time to spend with your family, do your hobbies, just relax and recharge. But entrepreneurs, especially when they're first starting out, they often find it harder to separate work from the rest of their lives because the business always needs attention.
Definitely. And another good thing about having a job that Emma and Mike mentioned is that there are so many opportunities to learn and grow. You're surrounded by people who have experience, you have chances to move up in the company, and a lot of times there are official training programs and mentorship opportunities available. It's almost like a built-in system for developing your skills.
That's a great point. Working in a company, you get to learn so much from just being there, watching others, and experiencing different parts of the industry. You might not get that kind of exposure as quickly if you're on your own. You're basically learning from everyone around you.
So it sounds like having a job has a lot going for it. But Emma made a good point that it's not perfect. There are some downsides that she and Mike talked about. One of the biggest ones is that your income can be limited. Even though you have that steady paycheck, it also means there's a limit to how much you can earn, no matter how well you do.
Exactly. You might get regular raises and promotions, but in the end, the company decides how much you can make. Like Emma explained, when you work harder and come up with new ideas, a lot of times it's the company that benefits the most financially, not you.
And there's also the lack of freedom. Mike and Emma both mentioned this. You have to follow the company's rules, answer to your manager, and sometimes you might get stuck doing things you don't enjoy or aren't passionate about. And let's be real, a bad boss can make your whole job miserable.
Yeah, when you work for someone else, you don't have as much control over what you do. You're working within the company's structure, so it can be harder to pursue your own ideas or make decisions on your own. That can be really frustrating for people who are more entrepreneurial.
And even though a job might feel safe, Mike and Emma reminded us that it's not always guaranteed. People get laid off, companies restructure or downsize, and sometimes the whole economy takes a hit, and even what seemed like a secure job is at risk. So it's not completely risk-free, is it?
Thinking that a job will always be there can be misleading. There are things outside your control that can happen, and at the end of the day, your job depends on how well the company's doing. It's a different kind of risk than owning a business, but it's still a risk.
And lastly, you often don't have much control over your time. Mike pointed this out. Even if you finish all your work early, you might still have to stay at the office until it's time to go home. That lack of flexibility can be a real pain for some people.
Yeah, it can feel a little outdated when more and more jobs are going remote and offering flexible schedules, right? Not being able to adjust your work hours to fit your personal life, that can definitely make you less happy with your job.
Okay, so we've covered the ins and outs of having a traditional job. Now let's switch gears and talk about what it's like to run your own business. It can be exciting, unpredictable, and both Emma and Mike were really passionate about the potential of this path. First of all, there's no limit to how much money you can make. Unlike with a fixed salary, your income is directly tied to how well your business does.
And what's really cool about that, going off what Emma said, is that it's not just about earning more. It's that your success depends on how innovative you are, how well you understand the market, and how well you execute your ideas. Your hard work directly translates into your financial success. It's totally different than waiting for a yearly raise you're in control.
Absolutely. And then there's the big reason a lot of people become entrepreneurs: independence. Mike and Emma both talked about how appealing it is to be your own boss, set your own hours, choose where you want to work, and build something that aligns with your values and what you're passionate about. Having that level of freedom is a huge motivator for a lot of people.
That sense of control and ownership can be super empowering. You get to make the decisions, set the direction for the company, and build it exactly how you envision it. That kind of motivation coming from within is way more powerful than just following orders from someone else.
And Mike also talked about the deep sense of satisfaction that comes from running your own business.
Yeah.
Watching something you created from scratch not only succeed, but thrive, that's a completely different feeling than just doing your assigned tasks at a regular job.
Yeah, that feeling of making a direct impact and accomplishing something you created, it's a huge reward for entrepreneurs. Knowing that you built something that helps others and reflects your own hard work, that's a really powerful feeling.
And Emma mentioned something called passive income, which is the idea that your business can make money even when you're not actively working. A lot of entrepreneurs strive for that in the long run, building a sustainable business that can run on its own, at least to some extent.
That's the dream for a lot of entrepreneurs, isn't it? To create a business that brings in money without needing their constant attention. It's about building something that works for you instead of you constantly working for it. But it's important to remember that to get to that point, it takes a lot of upfront work and planning.
Okay, so the entrepreneurial path sounds pretty amazing. You've got unlimited potential, freedom. But like Emma said, it's not always easy. There are some serious drawbacks that she and Mike pointed out. One of the biggest ones is that it's risky. A lot of new businesses unfortunately don't make it, especially in the first few years.
That's something everyone needs to be aware of. Starting a business means putting your money and your time on the line. You could lose your investment and all those hours you put in. You have to be okay with uncertainty and be ready to bounce back from setbacks.
And that high risk often means your finances will be unpredictable, like Emma explained. You don't have that steady paycheck coming in. Especially at the beginning, your income might go up and down. There are no guarantees, so managing your cash flow becomes super important.
Not having that consistent income can be stressful, especially when you have bills to pay and other financial responsibilities. Being able to manage your money well and get through those periods when you're not making as much, those are essential skills for any business owner.
And be prepared to work a lot. Mike talked about how common it is for entrepreneurs to work long hours, especially when they're first starting out. That typical 9-to-5 workday might become a thing of the past.
When you're running your own business, it can feel like it needs your attention all the time. You're in charge of every part of it, so you might end up working nights, weekends, and basically whenever you need to make sure it runs smoothly and gets off the ground.
And with all those responsibilities comes a lot of stress, like Emma mentioned. You're dealing with customers, maybe managing employees, handling marketing and sales, taking care of the finances, and constantly facing competition. It can be a lot to handle.
Yeah, as a business owner, the responsibility is all on you. You're the one who has to answer for the good and the bad. That kind of pressure from all sides can definitely lead to a lot of stress and anxiety.
And one last thing to remember is that those benefits you get with a job, like health insurance and retirement plans, they go away when you run your own business. You have to take care of all that yourself, like Emma reminded us.
It's a big change. You have to research, find, and pay for those benefits on your own, which can add a significant cost, especially if you're a solo entrepreneur or a small startup. It's just one more thing to manage.
So after weighing all of that, the security versus the potential, the structure versus the freedom, the big question is, what's right for you? Mike and Emma talked about this a lot, and they both agreed that there's no better choice overall. It really depends on you, your personality, your priorities, and what you're looking for in your career.
Exactly. There isn't one perfect option for everyone. It's about finding a path that fits your values, how much risk you're comfortable with, and what you want to achieve in the long run. What matters most to you? Security, freedom, feeling fulfilled.
If you realize that stability, a predictable income, and a clear separation between work and life are really important to you, then working a traditional job might be the best fit. For a lot of people, that sense of security and balance is really valuable.
But if you're more comfortable with risk, if you don't mind uncertainty, and if you're willing to put in a lot of effort, even if it takes a while to see the rewards, then maybe becoming an entrepreneur is more appealing. You might be drawn to the freedom and the chance to build something from scratch.
And I thought it was interesting what Emma and Mike said about finding a middle ground. You could start a business on the side while you still have your job. That way you can test your ideas, build some momentum, and still have that steady income to fall back on. It seems like a smart strategy for people who are maybe a little hesitant to take a big risk, but still want to try being an entrepreneur.
That's a really smart way to minimize the risk. You get to learn how to run a business, see if your idea works, all while still having the security of a regular job. You don't have to jump in all at once.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, the main takeaway is that there's no one right answer when it comes to choosing between a job and a business. It's a really personal decision, and each path has its pros and cons. What's important is finding the path that aligns with your own situation, your values, and what you want to achieve.
Definitely. And to leave you with something to think about, borrowing from what Mike said, ask yourself this: how comfortable are you with risk compared to how much you need security? And even more importantly, what does fulfillment mean to you when it comes to your career? Is it about working with a team and having stability? Or is it about having the freedom to create something on your own? Those are the big questions to consider.
Yeah, those are some really important things to think about. We hope this deep dive has helped you start exploring those questions for yourself. Thanks for joining us.